Social Attitudes survey has found that public support for transgender people being allowed to change their sex on their birth certificate has fallen sharply to 32%. That's a drop of 21 points in the last 2 years. Professor Sir John Curtice, Senior Research Fellow at the National Centre for Social Research, which published the report, joins me now. Sir John, can you tell me a bit about this survey? What does it show?
Well, the couple of questions we asked about transgender were part of a wider project in which we were interested at trying to ascertain people's views and how they might have changed and who had what views on the broader issue of what we've come to know as culture wars, of which the debate about transgender is regarded by some as part. So you have to understand it's part of a much wider project. And there were only a couple of questions about transgender, and it wasn't, the survey wasn't particularly doing an in-depth study of attitudes towards transgender people. That said, what did we discover? Well, we discovered a couple of things that are actually in line with other survey research and polling out there. One, as you've already said, is that when you ask people whether or not people should be able to change their legal gender, which is what we were trying to get at when we said to people, should they be able to change the gender that's recorded on their birth certificate, it looks as though there has been a decline, although there was a very slight change in the wording of the question to around public opinion being more or less evenly divided, 32% in favour, 39% against. That's in line with other polling work. The other question we asked was to ask people whether or not equal opportunities for people who are transgender had gone too far or not gone far enough. On that, public opinion split pretty much exactly down the middle, with a third saying they'd gone too far and a third saying they'd not gone far enough. And I think there is no doubt. I mean, this is a subject which, has really only has become a subject of wide social debate during the course of the last few years, number one. Two, we know actually a lot of people are still not engaged in that debate. But that three, clearly it is a subject on which opinion is divided. And that it may be, though I stress maybe, that as some of this debate has started and become more widely known, the issue at least of changing people's legal gender is one where as yet those who are advocating it should be made easier for trans people to do this have not necessarily won the argument, though I should say other research also indicates that if you ask whether people should be allowed to change their social gender, in other words, should somebody who feels that they're a man having been born a woman should be able to dress in women's clothes, should be acknowledged as he, etc. That does seem to be something that does gain fairly widespread acceptance.
It's quite interesting because the Times wrote up your report and focused on this area at the start of its article, and they framed it as attitudes are not getting more liberal. And in my mind, it's simply that this issue has come to the fore. People understand it more. They understand the trade-offs, the way transgender rights relate to women's rights, and so on and so forth. So people are just a bit more clued up. It's not that they're suddenly becoming little authoritarians.
Well, that may well be true. I mean, what is true, however, is that even on this issue, as indeed is true of most of the issues in the so-culture wars debate, is something where those people whom you can classify on the basis of other questions as social liberals are more likely to be, say, trans people should be able to change their legal gender than are those who are of a more socially conservative disposition. But again, I think, one of the reasons why this is interesting is that on virtually all of the other issues that we asked about, things like, do we think that Britain is better than other countries? Should we have pride in our past? Should we be doing more to acknowledge the position of Black and Asian people? On all of those issues, we certainly have become more liberal. The interesting thing about the transgender debate is it does stand out as being one where so far, at least, it's not moved in the same direction. That said, of course, somebody who, like myself, who's been engaged in this kind of research for a very long time, where we stand on attitudes towards transgender reminds me very much of where we stood on attitudes towards same-sex relationships little more than 20 years ago. That again, at that stage, we were pretty evenly divided on the subject, with, yes, older people less willing to say that same-sex relationships were okay than were younger people, women more likely to say that it was okay than men. And that, by the way, is also true on transgender, although a lot of the talk is about spaces.
I'm not sure you can compare those two like that.
Allow people to change their gender.
I'm not sure you can make the comparison between same-sex relationships and attitudes towards things like self-ID and legal sex changes. But anyway, that was very, very interesting for you to go over what you found in your research.